Hey, this is Brandon Crawford from the San Francisco Giants, and you're listening to Torture Cast.
You're listening to a podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. Let's go, Giants! With hosts Willie Dills, Chad King, Ben Lee, and Eric Nathanson. Dedicated to the greatest team in Major League Baseball, the San Francisco Giants. This is Torture Cast. Standing on time, not gonna stop. We came to play, ain't slowing down. Falling on, we're here to stay, and we're stomping on whatever's in our way. I'm feeling like a giant tonight.
Well, Boch, this is it. The end of a long, incredible journey. When you started on this road, bet you didn't know where it would lead.
Bruce Bochy, the man with the Midas touch in this series. Everything you touch turned to gold.
I can't say enough about the heart and determination this club played with. It doesn't get any better than this.
But you did know something, didn't you?
We're here to introduce the 37th manager in Giants history, Bruce Bochy.
I see this as an opportunity to hopefully bring winning baseball back here to San Francisco.
You knew how to find the right stuff.
Stricken out swinging. The ball game is over, and the Giants have won the National League Western Division title.
You knew how to turn a band of misfits into champions.
For the first time in 52 years, the Giants are world champions.
You knew how to capture the heart of the city. And when the critics weren't convinced, you showed them again for good measure.
He's got it! The Giants win the pennant!
You ignored the odds and went all in.
Number 3 for Pablo Sandoval. It is gone!
You made everyone do a double take.
Cabrera takes strike 3 called, and the Giants have won the World Series in Detroit.
You taught us the improbable is always possible. You trusted your instincts and you trusted your guys. When everyone else was playing in the box, you were thinking outside of it.
And the Giants have won. They have won the World Series for the 3rd time in 5 years.
Making history is one thing, but your legacy is so much more than that. It lives on in the lessons you taught us, in the examples you set, in the lives you touched.
First of all, congratulations. You're in the big league.
So many lives. Your light reflects so brightly upon the stars of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And it'll keep shining. That kind of brilliance is rare, and we got to witness 25 years of it. So at the end of this road, what can we say? This game will never be the same. And neither will we. Thank you, Boch.
It's Monday, September 30th, 2019, and I'm already getting jumped up again.
Me too.
And this is episode 182 of the Torture Cast, the podcast by and for fans of your sobbing San Francisco Giants fans and podcasters. I'm your host, Chad King, and joining me today, sniffing all the way from Georgia, is Eric Nathanson. Man, what a freaking tribute this weekend, huh?
Oh my God, what else is going to make a couple of 40-something-year-old men just bawl like babies? I got chills again. The moment you turned it on, I got chills again. I started tearing up. Oh, It's hard to. It really is. Sorry, I know this is an audio medium, but it's tough to put into words just how that makes you feel. And so I'm just glad I got to watch it. I'm doing all right. I'm sad that baseball's over, but I'm glad that we got to celebrate Bochy. So how you doing with all this?
I didn't think it would hit me this hard. I really didn't. He's only the fourth manager in the last 35 years for the Giants. They don't turn over managers often. And when Felipe Alou left, didn't hit me. When Dusty Baker left, I actually was a little sad, but at the same time, was still upset about the 2002 Russ Ortiz situation. Yep. Roger Craig, loved him, didn't cry about it. Bruce Bochy is different. He obviously had a very long tenure with 13 years with the Giants, but there's the connection with the championships, and I think that's what most people will remember, is not just his even keel, the way he reacted with the media and his players, but the fact that he brought 3 championships to San Francisco. That's clearly point number one. But since we started this podcast in 2011, that's the manager that we've covered. And I've had the fortunate chance, and I consider myself lucky to have covered 4 to 8 games or whatever per year since 2012, and talked to Bruce Bochy himself, listened to his pre-game and post-game interviews, his pressers, interviewed him several times, talked to him one-on-one, and he is a unique individual. There is something about him that just draws you towards him. He is a remarkable person, and he guided this ship for so many years, and to the success that we never thought of as fans that could be achieved in such a short amount of time. So it's a snowball effect. It's layer upon layer. If he, was a crappy manager in the sense of results didn't happen, which is a product of the front office and drafting and a lot of things that the manager cannot control, he clearly would not have been around this long, and he wouldn't have been remembered so fondly. But the fact of the matter is, it was a combination of drafting and signing, development, and then his gentle touch, his ability to call the bullpen at the right time in the playoffs, the fact that they were 11-1 in postseason series, mostly because of him. That's what's leaving the indelible mark in Giants history. And as a fan, I'm sure you we're just tingling during the ceremony yesterday, and that's what we're going to cover here in episode 182. This is the Bochy Love Fest, the Thank You Boch podcast. Yeah. And we're going to go as long as we want for this, and then we'll break and record episode 183, in which we'll talk about the weekend review and kind of summarize the playoff picture, give our predictions, postseason award predictions, things of that nature, because otherwise it would be a 2+ hour podcast, and you should be able to digest this in 2 chunks. So just look for episode 183 if you want to listen to that stuff as well. But I don't know. How are you feeling yesterday, Eric?
It's a lot to cover, because Bochy, like you said, layers is a really good way to put it, and they go so deep. And as we go through the ceremony here, we'll see how deep the layers were. I'm not upset. I'm most sad because I think the realization, and I texted this to you last night, I think the realization that the golden age of San Francisco Giants baseball has ended is what is hitting me. And to think that it all started and ended with that man in the dugout is just quite the compliment to him. When he was brought in originally, Barry Bonds was still on the team, and he was having his last season chasing the home run record. And so they needed a man to transition from the Barry Bonds show to the future. And Bruce Bochy was the perfect man for that job. He came in and he let things play out in 2007. I don't think he ever expected that they were going to compete that year. And then in 2008, they started to show little signs of life. And then the 2009 team really started to show signs of life. And it all came together with that 2010 team. And looking back I'm just listening to Flan there, looking back on the 3 different championships, they all happened in such different ways. And it's such a such a testament to what kind of a manager and what kind of a man can do those kinds of things and get those kinds of results from his players. And, I love that the little clip of him telling Brandon Belt he's a big leaguer is in there. I assume that came from the Showtime show that they followed them the season after they won the series in 2010. And it just the way he does certain things, he puts you at ease, all the players, and we're going to get to this stuff. All the players I can't think of anybody ever saying a cross word about Bruce Bochy. And that is quite the testament to him. So, that was phenomenal. I didn't watch it live. As many of you on Twitter saw last night, I watched it late last night and live tweeted my thought process, because most of the Bay Area is 49er fans and Raiders fans, and they didn't have football running into the Giants game yesterday in the Bochy ceremony. I, on the other hand, had a Bears-Vikings game, and in my house, that's going to take precedence. So I had to watch it on my own time, and I'm glad I did, because it gave me a chance to digest it. And I encourage anybody who was at the ceremony or who watched it on TV to relive it once again, because there are things you'll pick up on that you didn't even notice right away. And, just starting from the top, the Giants, they absolutely did it right. It was pointed out to me that last year's Barry Bonds ceremony was probably one of the best ones they've ever put on. This blew that out of the water. And, I don't know about you, Chad, but it put a great punctuation on the golden era of Giants baseball.
I was watching, not live, unfortunately. My wife is traveling right now, and so yesterday was Sunday when the game was going on, and I watched the first inning, and we'll talk about it in the second podcast, 183, but they bombed it. They allowed 5 runs in the first, and no one really cared after that point. They just said, hey, let's get this game over. If they're not going to win it for Boch, just let's end it. Let's get to the post-game ceremony and just kind of put some salve on this wound of losing and getting swept by the Dodgers at home, because that's not what's important. It didn't have any implications or any effect on postseason standings or playoff seeding or anything like that. It was just more of a gut punch. But once we got to the ceremony, I was out with my kids, taking them, ironically, baseball and softball equipment shopping and grocery shopping and things of that nature. But when I came home, my son, who loves to watch his iPad, loves to play Fortnite on his Switch, I had taken it away earlier in the day because he had been kind of rude and, there were some behavioral problems there. And I said, you know what, bud? Why don't you sit down with me and watch this ceremony? And he said, well, what ceremony is this? And I said, Bruce Bochy? And he goes yeah, I know the name. He's 9 years old. He's, at 9, I didn't know all the managers' names. I knew, Roger Craig and Frank Robinson and things like that, but I didn't really follow them. I said, you're going to sit down and you're going to watch this ceremony. You're going to understand what this man meant to San Francisco and the Giants. And he knows about my fandom for the Giants. My whole office is decorated in Giants gear. He loves orange. He loves wearing Giants gear. He just doesn't know a lot about the game and a lot about the players and the personnel. So he sat there and he was mesmerized by it. And I actually did not expect it. That was how good of a ceremony it was, Eric. My 9-year-old son, who doesn't really care too much about what you and I care about, really, really enjoyed it. And after the Flan video, and as it got through, Tim Lincecum appearing, and the speech by Jake Peavy and Pablo and Posey and Bruce's speech himself, I kept freaking tearing up. And here's my son looking over me go, Dad, are you crying again? He didn't quite understand why I was crying, but I said, buddy, this means so much to me. And yeah, I know you don't understand it, but this is the end of an era. And it's hard to kind of look back on and realize it's over. It's not that the Giants can't win more World Series in the future. Of course not. But this is the close to a very big chapter, not only in Giants history, but my history and your history as a fan. And it's hard. It really is hard because you want this to continue. It's definitely nothing like watching your child grow up and going, holy crap, she went to her first homecoming dance this last weekend, which, by the way, my daughter did. And realizing, I just remembered her as a 2-year-old, walking around, or a 4-year-old riding her tricycle around and saying cute things. It's not that level of impact, but it's very similar. It's like, holy crap, those days are gone. And I don't know what I'm going to do going forward. That's kind of how I felt yesterday. I'm still processing. It's been 24 hours. It's difficult.
That's a good way to put it. Still processing, because I find that happening to me because it's just odd to think of somebody else in that dugout next season. It's strange. He was the captain of the ship, and when you lose the captain of the ship, it's a rudderless nightmare, and we worry that that's what it can turn into, which is why we cherish this era of Giants baseball so much. And, I had a somewhat similar experience. My wife, when I put it on, I put it on in the living room, and she was in her office, and she's like, I'm not going to watch, you enjoy your thing. And then she heard me laugh at something, and she ended up out there, and then she didn't move either for an hour. And my wife is a born and raised Cubs fan, but she has watched the Giants with me since I started watching them on a daily basis around 2011, 2012. Because back in the day, we didn't have MLB TV and all that jazz. So I personally was not there to see Bochy every day in and day out in 07, 8, 9, and 10. But when I finally was, and it just solidifies how important. I don't think any of this could have happened without him. And it shows how important he was to the Giants and to the game of baseball. He really was. Nobody across baseball ever expected the Giants to win 3 championships over 5 years. Nobody expected them to win 1. As Flan put it, and as Baggs wrote about it, they were truly a band of misfits in 2010. That team was off the waiver wire pickups like Cody Ross. It was Aubrey Huff having a career year for the first time. Jonathan Sanchez stepping up and being one of the better pitchers for them. Those were all unexpected things, and Bochy had his finger on all of it. And there was a lot said yesterday that pointed out how Bochy lets you be you. And I think that is really why he's so entwined in the hearts and minds of all of us. And I know you're going to tack on his speech, I believe, at the end of this show. And you can hear it when he mentions the fans. He really, really does seem to understand how much he means to us. And it makes it so much cooler. It really does. He seems to love us and love the Giants just as much as we love him back. And, it showed with all the send-off videos that were posted throughout the week and into Sunday. I mean, the list that you have here, do you mind if I start reading off this list here?
And this is like not even half.
No, it's not.
This is not comprehensive at all.
Yeah, I still, part of me wants to go back to the Giants Twitter feed and just go back and watch every one of these. And that's a process that'll take a while because it's going back days. But not only did he impact baseball, he impacted the Bay Area. And that's why the send-off videos, I mean, you had Jerry Rice with a thank you video, Steve Mariucci with a thank you video, Trevor Hoffman, which makes sense. He was Bochy's closer down in San Diego. Joe Panic was able to post a video from over with the Mets. Steve Kerr, probably the other greatest current coach in the Bay Area, sent him his thank you. Dave Roberts, who we saw also join the festivities, and we'll talk about that a little moment later. Chris Berman, I heard the Chris Berman one. They played it on the video, I think, board right before the ceremony as they were setting up. Mm-hmm. And then you had, the usual suspects. Pablo gave his, Baumgartner gave his, Posey gave his, Kruk and Kite and Miller and Flem did theirs, which I thought theirs was phenomenal. It really was. They couldn't stop laughing the entire time. It was almost like they couldn't believe that the last 10 years that they've been, I guess 13 years with Bochy specifically, that's been going on. And it was just great to see that these send-off videos came from so many different places. And I mean, even Rob Schneider got a send-off video.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe
Matt
that.
Cain and Aubrey
Yep.
Huff and Pat Burrell. I mean, it went on and on. Obviously, current Giants, Brandon Crawford and whatever, with their glasses of wine in the park. I mean, we're skipping over a lot of people. Like, the love that was exuded for Bruce Bochy this last week was incredible. They showed, anywhere from 3 to 6 of these videos every night for the last week. That's why I don't have a complete control on every single one that was ever shown, but you get the gist. The love for this man knows no bounds. I was at the game on Wednesday covering it against the Rockies, and that's when Joe Panik's video popped up. And, they don't preview this. They don't tell you this is coming. It just pops up in the middle of the 5th inning, in between innings. And the stadium lost its shit. It really did. Everybody just loved Joe Panik, still does, and we do too. And we talked about his release, a month or 6 weeks ago, and it was kind of tough, but at the same time we understood why Zaidi did it. But he still had the mettle to say, yes, I love this man like a father, and recorded a video in his full Mets uniform, by the way. They clearly did it like pre or post game. He wasn't in street clothes, but point of the matter is, he just touched so many lives in such a positive way, and to have some of these icons from Bay Area sports and media, and then just down to your ex-player from 6 years ago, it really shows a lot. This guy is not a normal manager. He is a very special manager. I mean, look how many guys were fired this week, in baseball. He stuck around. He was the longest tenured manager up until when he said he was going to retire. It's incredible in this day and age for the Giants to have kept the manager for so long.
Yeah, and it shows with the different players, ex-players coming back and stuff like that. Like, the list we're about to go through of ex-players that came back is so much longer than I expected it to be. And people came from everywhere, and we saw it. Bobby Evans had to sit next to Farhan Zaidi on the field yesterday.
Oh my God! So I don't mean to interrupt, but at the same time, it's like, look, both him and Sabian are still employed by the Giants, but at the same time, we know that he failed as a GM, and that's why they brought in Farhan. And the fact that it was Sabian and Evans and then Farhan sitting, aside from one another was just a little awkward in my view. I mean, clearly those guys probably get along and everything's fine, but at the same time, it's like, you work in your job and then you're demoted and they bring in this guy who's younger than you, and then you got to sit with him and talk with him, and he's your boss. And that's kind of what it was like. So it's kind of like awkward. But
right. But to show that these guys are willing to sit through an awkward situation for that man, for Bruce Bochy, is really what stuck out to me. There were guys that showed up at the yard that we didn't expect to show up. I had, what I mean? I had no idea Jay from Jay and Silent Bob was going to be there, and then Brian Wilson showed up. It's unbelievable, snoochie boochie, but it just, the fact that so many wanted to be there for it shows the far-reaching impact. And you mentioned so many managers got fired in the last week, and we're talking managers. Clint Hurdle has been with Pittsburgh for 9 years. Joe Madden, it was a quote-unquote mutually parting of ways, and I kind of believe that mutual one.
Oh, you think so?
Well, that one, I think,
you have a better
pulse
on the Cubs than I do. Yeah.
Yeah, because Joe and Theo split a bottle of wine and sat down and said, "Okay, am I going to stay? Do we want to, redo this, or do you think that you need to go in a different direction?"
Yeah, Joe does strike me because he's a very, very smart man, very good, gregarious man. He knows he has another job out there, so I could see him going, "Yeah, my time here has run its course."
And the job that he is most being linked to now is the Angels job.
I was about to say
Brad
Ausmus was fired after 1 year. And what was crazy about it is they won, 75 games or something this year, but it was their worst record since like 1980 or 1999 or something. So, which I was kind of surprised at. I was like,
Me
really?
too.
That doesn't make sense.
But
I guess
the
they've always
fact
been in
that-
the high 70s and low 80s. Yeah.
Yeah, you look at, though, Brad Ausmus is on his second managerial gig, and he got fired after 1 year.
Yeah.
Bochy never got fired. He left San Diego. His
And he had
contract
worse
was up.
records. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
and
like,
that
what?
didn't happen. And that's only because of Bruce Bochy being who he is. He was trusted to do things, and he talked about that in his speech, how they trusted him to do things. And that doesn't happen with other teams, and that's what makes us as Giants fans, I don't want to say unique, but look around the league at the way teams treat. No other manager had some ceremony. Joe Madden didn't go out in front of Wrigley Field. And I mean, this is a guy who brought a world championship to a team for the first time in 108 years. And he was shown the door 3 years later.
Isn't that crazy?
It is. That blows my mind still. I actually understand it. And that's, again, because I know some things. I have some friends who work in the industry in Chicago, and I've heard some things. So I totally get why that happened. But, you don't see that happening. Clint Hurdle, like I said, he finally brought the Pirates back to relevance. They finally had winning seasons for the first time in 20-something years. And they played in 4 different wild card games, maybe 3 or 4 during Hurdle's tenure. But they just kicked him out the door at the end of the season. They didn't put on a great ceremony for the guy. And I understand world championships have something to do with it, but it's very rare that a fan base, a team, gets to acknowledge and celebrate somebody like Bruce Bochy in the way that we got to. And, that's why everything played out right, and that's why everybody showed up yesterday.
Never have I ever seen anything like this for a manager. Honestly, in my lifetime, I can't recall something this grandiose. I know a lot of managers weren't fired. They retired, or transitioned or whatever, like Joe Torre and what have you. And they had ceremonies, but nothing like this. This was over the top, amazing. So much was deserved by the fan base and his players and staff and everyone else. I know it's a little bit in the culture we live in terms of, social media and getting your clicks and likes and national press on ESPN and MLB Network and all that. But I look past all that. That was definitely not the motivation here. It didn't matter if this wasn't televised. They still would have had the exact same ceremony, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it shows Bochy brought the Giants to relevance. They were relevant because of Barry Bonds, but they weren't relevant. Bonds was relevant.
Yeah.
And while Dusty might have paved the way during the Bonds years to bring them back to relevance with 93, 97, 02, and 03. 02. Yeah.
Yep.
03 was Philippe's first year. That's my bad.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, he was 03 to 06. Yeah.
Right. So it's like he brought them back to relevance. There are Giants fans listening to this podcast right now from places as far away as Australia who are Giants fans because of the influence that Bruce Bochy had over this organization. Mm-hmm. And it's strange to say it like that, but he's the one man that you can tie it all back to. Yes, Bumgarner and Posey are the core of 3 championship teams. They're that thread, that common thread. But Bochy is the one that got the most out of them. And to see everybody come together like that, like you said, it didn't even have to be televised. The fans in the ballpark would have been there for it no matter what.
Yeah, and just to remind you guys, if you're listening to this episode 182, our next episode, which will be released at the same time, 183, is going to go over the week in review. And you just mentioned Madison Bumgarner. He's a big topic we want to talk about, but we're not going to talk about him during this episode. We want to talk about him during the next episode. So listen to 183 for that discussion.
Yeah, this is Bochy's day. It's time to reflect on the goodness, not worry about the future just yet. And there is a place for that in the world, to sometimes savor the moment. And as Giants fans, we're savoring that moment. I couldn't believe It was so funny because every time Rennell started to introduce one of these Giants greats, I immediately mumbled who it was before she said who it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was too easy, and it was so funny because she introduced. First they brought out. Oh no, you're right. They first on the field introduced Orlando Cepeda, Juan Marichal, and Willie Mays. And if Willie McCovey had been alive, he would have been there as well.
Oh,
it's almost a shame. It's almost a shame that Peter McGowan and Willie McCovey missed this moment. Not to get slightly morose for a moment, but I mean, Peter is the one that brought him. Larry Bear talked about it, but Peter is the one that pretty much, I think, brought him there.
Yeah,
and
in
Peter,
fact, they met and they had broke bread at Peter McGowan's house.
I mean, that's the stuff that that's where it was born. You know what I mean? That this dynasty was born in Peter McGowan's house.
Yeah.
Which is just crazy to think about. And the fact that even the old greats like Marichal, Cepeda, Mays, I feel like there was one more in that row and I can't think of who it was. The fact that they wanted to be there speaks volumes to the organization as a whole and his influence on the organization. So, let's go through the ceremony a little bit and, kind of talk about the points that stuck out to us, the moments that made us laugh, made us cry. I mean, the chills have finally gone away from listening to Thank You Flan, the Thank You Boch video from Flan. So, I think we should be able to handle this without breaking down too much.
Oh, I think so. So Rennell did a great job emceeing the whole event, and they introduced everybody out of center field, the center field gates, basically, out of the garden, which is fine. Maybe future place for the bullpens. We'll see. To be determined.
Yep.
But they there's a lot of Giants they could have brought into the ceremony. I actually think that they kind of cut it back on purpose because they knew that the core people who were related to Bochy, they had so much time to speak that they're like, look, if we bring everyone back to speak and introduce out of center field, this thing's going to go 5 hours. We can't do that. So they had to cut it back. I mean, I'm thinking like, Vida Blue and Gaylord Perry and, these kind of guys that were not involved in the ceremony, right? They're great Giants, some of them Hall of Famers, but they needed to cut it back. So they did introduce those guys that you talked about, Marichal, Cepeda, Mays. I mean, those guys are obvious, but they first introduced Jeffrey Leonard, Dave Dravecky, and then Flan and Righetti as being connected to Bochy. And, of course, that's with their days with the Padres organization, and then of course coaching with him. So those guys came out. It was great. I love Dravecky. By the way, what was it? It was during the first Rockies game, I think it was. I'm just thinking of this right now. Did you see freaking who was it? Goose Gossage?
Dravecky and Goose Gossage, yes.
Oh,
they
my
were cracking
God.
up.
I wanted to be a fly on their chair. I mean, the reactions from both men on the stories they were telling, the jokes they were telling, was so genuine. And they were just laughing. It was like beer gut barrel laughing. I wanted to be a part of that discussion so bad. I wanted to hear what they were talking about because they were just having the greatest time in the world. And it was great to see Dave Dravecky laugh so hard. So my son, who was watching the ceremonies with me, when he saw him come out, he goes, Dad, why is that guy missing an arm? I was like, yes, he is. Yes, he is. Well, why? And I had to explain the whole thing to him. But I told him, I said, that was a big part of my, later teenage years, watching him, break his arm in Montreal, and Will Clark, my favorite player, running over and taking care of him. And then, coming back and pitching that game against Cincinnati at home in August of 1989, I believe it was, and getting the 3-0 victory. I mean, so many of these memories are just marked in my mind, and he doesn't know who this guy is. He's, this fat dude with no arm, It's like, no, he's really important in Giants history. He's not a Hall of Famer, or anything like that, but he's left an indelible mark in Giants history. But that was a lot of fun watching those guys came out. But then they decided to, okay, we're going to parse this out with some guys that we've invited. And they first started with the 2007 to 2009 teams for the Giants. Of course, Bochy's first year with the Giants was 2007. That was Barry Bonds last year. But they included those 3-year seasons. So the guys who showed up were Vinny Chalk, Kevin Correa, Ryan Klesko, Brad Hennessy, Tyler Walker. By the way, Tyler Walker is a friend of my good friend who has season tickets and runs one of our fantasy football leagues. So that was kind of cool. I actually met Tyler Walker during spring training back in 2008. Fred Lewis, Jack Tashner, Kevin Franson. I hit a home run off of his cousin, by the way, in the playoffs in 2009. Just want to say that. Noah Lowry, Pedro Feliz. Vote for Pedro. Ray Durham, who I just love that guy. Omar Vizquel, of course, the MVP, Hall of Famer, and then Barry Bonds. So that was quite an eclectic group. And it's funny because, like, we know these names, we watch these guys play, but you forget about them.
Yeah.
And, you don't forget about Barry Bonds or Omar Vizquel, but you forget about, Jack Tashner, Fred Lewis, Tyler Walker, Brad Hennessy, and
Vinny Chalk.
Yeah, Vinny Chalk.
I no offense to Vinny Chalk, but when they said his name, I was like, what? Really? I was a little surprised. And Klesko looked exactly like I expect him to look. He looks like he just came out of the woods from a hunting trip. He was wearing his Yeti hat. It was nice to see Noah Lowry. Noah to me was almost Timmy before Timmy in a sense.
I totally agree. He just didn't
nowhere
peak.
near as good as
He did
Timmy.
not peak. Yeah.
Right, nowhere near as good. But when Noah Lowry was pitching, it was exciting. He was the guy, and because Noah didn't throw 95 miles an hour to strike you out, he was he was like Kirk Reeder Part 2, I think is pretty much how he was. And it was great to see Ray show up, and Omar Vizquel, who is available as a new manager, and Barry Bonds. And then they introduced Dave Roberts, which is just, he would not have been there if the Dodgers were not in town. Mm-hmm. And to see Roberts come running out, like you say here, wearing his thank you Boch shirt, over his Dodgers uniform, come running out, and you saw how the guys were so happy to see him. And Barry lifted him up over his shoulder, and then when Doc kind of got into the mix with the guys again, Barry went and grabbed the Dodgers hat off of his head, and Dave didn't wear it the rest of the ceremony. I don't know where he put it, but he wouldn't let him do it. And I thought that was so great, because it's one of those things that's so ingrained in you, and it just didn't go away for Barry. And just to see those guys, I love on each other is the best way I could say it. It was kind of neat to know that these were the guys that were there before it really started.
It's really weird to think that Dave Roberts, of course, was the catalyst for the Red Sox winning their first World Series in 100 years or whatever in 2004. And then he came to the Giants and, played admirably, was a good player. And he missed the World Championship by 1 year. And not saying that they would have won if he, was on the team in 2010. But the point is, he played for the Giants, and he came out with that Thank You Boch shirt, which was incredible. Could you imagine Bruce Bochy I know he's not connected to the Dodgers. I get it. But what if he came out in a, for Thank You Lasorda shirt, that's what it must have looked like to Dodgers fans, right? Who maybe don't fully understand the context of the situation. But he goes out into center field, and I was watching the recording too. And when I saw it, I was like, "What? Oh, he still has a Dodger hat on. What is he doing?" Like, it doesn't look good, right? He's been great. He's been a great sport. He's going out there. And then, of course, they get in the scrum with the 2010 team. And then Barry Bonds takes his hat and runs, and Dave Roberts is like, "Oh, shit, you got my hat." And he chases him, and he chucks it in the outfield, and then they had a great laugh about it. And, he spent the rest of the ceremony without his hat because I don't think he thought about it, to be honest. I think he would just went out with his hat on. I saw some social media posts like, he was like trying to screw the Giants with his. No, you go outside with your hat on. You just you forget about it, right?
He was our guy before he was the Dodgers guy.
Yeah. So, how many managers, especially a Dodgers manager, would have done something like that, even if they had played for the Giants prior? It's like, I hate the Dodgers. We hate the Dodgers. We hate them so much. But individually, Dave Roberts is a great man. Clayton Kershaw is a great man. These guys who play for our opposition, no matter how much we hate the team, I can't hate the guys individually. Right. They're quality individuals. And we'll talk about it in episode 183, as far as what Clayton Kershaw and Bum did and all that stuff. But there's good stuff. I mean, just because you play for the Dodgers doesn't mean you're a bad individual.
Nope, you just made the wrong choice or happen to be drafted in the wrong organization. I mean, there are good people, myself included, who have made bad choices at times. So we can forgive certain things like that.
Certain things, yeah. You chose to play for the Dodgers. God bless your soul.
The irony of it is Farhan Zaidi is the man that hired Dave Roberts to be the Dodgers manager.
That's what's so funny about this. It's like so many people were talking about Farhan's hiring last year and said, oh, he's a Dodger mole and he's going to infiltrate the Giants and bring them down. It's like, okay, I know you're a troll anyway, but, I mean, he needs to make money. He's not going to bring down an organization. That would not go for his job performance. But you're right. He came from the Dodgers. He really was mostly responsible for who the Dodgers are today. The best team in the National League, the number 1 seed, which is ironic. But at the same time, if you can't beat them, join them is a little bit of the moniker I like to believe in. And Farhan's come over to the Giants, and he is not beholden to the Dodgers at all. Nope. That doesn't improve his salary, his tenure, his resume. No, he is trying to beat the Dodgers now. That's his ultimate goal. Beat the Dodgers, win the World Series. So there's no doubt in my mind, his analytical brain is trying to, do this over the next couple of years. So everyone who thinks that Farhan is some mole for the Dodgers, you're sorely mistaken.
Yeah, and that's why it is so funny that there are so many connections that sometimes we just have to lean into them. We just have to accept that Dave Roberts is the manager over in the other dugout now. We just have to accept that's just how it is in nowadays game. This is not 1958 when Jackie Robinson got traded to the Giants and refused to go and retired instead. It's very different. And, that's why I love that Dave showed up. I loved that he came running out. I'm sure that he probably, had to say something to his team, and then they probably snuck into the visitors' dugout and just hung out until they introduced him. So it was really cool to see him smiling and running around the outfield. And anytime Barry shows up, I'm a happy man. And the fact that Barry only played for Bochy for 1 season, but still wanted to show up, was just really impressive to me because I don't think that he thinks Bochy impacted his career by much, but Barry understands the impact on the Giants that Bochy has had as somebody who has also impacted the Giants in the Bay Area. So it was good to see that kind of respect, come out through it. And then, they all came and they all hugged Bochy and they all gave him handshakes, and then they moved on to the championship years.
Yes, so they did 3 separate introductions for the 10, 12, and 14 years. And in 10, of course, they had Dan Runzler. Who could forget him? Mike Fontenot, Pat Burrell, who went to my high school, by the way, Aubrey Huff, Andres Torres, Cody Ross, Edgar Renteria, and then, of course, the eclectic Brian Wilson, who showed up with
Snoochie
very long
boochie.
hair, a pink shirt, and shorts with big basketball shoes. I mean, it was just perfect for Brian Wilson, and he came out with the trophy for 2010. So that was fantastic.
But come on, he couldn't put on a pair of freaking pants. The man looked like he was in a bathing suit. Everybody else is wearing pants. Like, come on,
right?
man.
Everybody was wearing blue jeans. Like, blue jeans was definitely the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So much so that it got me thinking, I don't think I can fit in my blue jeans anymore. I need to get a new pair. Because when you live down here in the South, you don't wear blue jeans too often unless it's nighttime and you're going out, because that's how we gussy up. But, like, you know, I'm a little older now. And I totally noticed. Everybody's, like, in jeans. It's all the jerseys and the jeans. And that was the other thing. They put everybody's name on the back of home jerseys, which they don't do.
I hate to be a curmudgeon. I know they did that for fan service.
Yes.
For people who don't know who these players are by their face or their number. I hated that. I absolutely hated that.
Really?
Well, it's just, that's not who they were when they were with the Giants.
That's
and
true.
They were known with the number on the back. That's it. And I see the names, and I understand why they're doing it. But at the same time, I figured, like, why? Why are you doing this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I couldn't pick Dan Runslow out of the lineup, so.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. And it's funny because he's literally the only name. Yeah. I don't either. He's literally the only name from the 10, 12, 14 that I probably could not pick out of the lineup. Everybody else I could. And it was fun. Like, you could see Wilson stop at Bochy. And, you know, he definitely said something. I'm not sure their relationship is fully repaired.
Yeah, I kind of got the same vibe, and we have no way of saying that. But during Bochy's speech, he did say that Brian Wilson was responsible for his first stent, which was freaking hilarious. He also said, Jeremy Affeldt, don't, you know, you're not out of this. You have one too.
Yep.
So he called them both out.
But
Affeldt's
Wilson's response to that
is different. I know.
Yeah.
Wilson's response was more like, oh, okay, whatever, dude. You know, it wasn't like, ha ha, you're the greatest. Yeah, it was more like, okay, you douchebag. Yeah.
I kind of wish Edgar had carried out the trophy, to be honest with you. He was the MVP of that World Series.
I was a little surprised about that, too. I agree. I mean, Brian Wilson is more known, and I think that's why they did that. Fear the Beard, the whole thing. But you're right. Edgar Renteria was the MVP for that year. And Bruce Bochy in his post-game speech did call that out. You know, he remembered one of his, several of his memorable moments, of course, were Matt Cain's perfect game, Pablo hitting 3 home runs in Game 1 versus the Tigers. By the way, I was there for Game 1 as a fan, saw all 3 home runs. It was awesome. And he called him Edgar's home run against Texas. So I was a little surprised about that because, Bochy threw shade at Brian Wilson for torture and giving him his first stent and didn't say anything else positive about him.
Nope.
And then, elevated Edgar, saying that was one of the memories he had and that he'll carry on into the future, not Brian Wilson striking out,
and
Yeah.
I also give credit to Andres Torres. He looked as fabulous as Andres Torres can because he loves to look good
all the time, Eric.
Yes, but at least he didn't wear what he wore to the Willie Mack ceremony, which was yoga pants.
Oh yeah,
the man put on regular pants for this ceremony, but still he had the ice showing. He had his sunglasses on. It was so good. It was so much fun.
He can pull it off.
Well, yeah, that was the debate all weekend.
You and me could not do that. No way.
Nope. But we don't have the body of an Andres Torres.
That's true.
Yeah, and then it was cool to see them all walk through, and the Brian Wilson, like we mentioned, and then they introduced the 2012 team. I'll go through this one, and they introduced Nate Shearholtz, greatest arm right fielder I've seen on the Giants in a long time. Angel Pagan, Guillermo Mota, Marco Scutaro, who stepped out and did his Scutaro pose when they introduced him.
Mm-hmm.
Barry Zito and Ryan Vogelsong. And just doubling back to Angel real quick, it was awesome that they stood face to face and saluted each other.
Oh my God, that was awesome when they came out of the center field gate, and Ryan Vogelsong carried the trophy. Barry Bonds, by the way, carried the trophy for 2010. Or sorry, not Barry Bonds. What am I talking about? The fact of the matter is, when they came up, Angel Pagan stood and saluted his superior officer. That was just so awesome. I just love that. He's been living full time in Puerto Rico, and here he comes out here. And this is what I think everybody has to understand is, I don't know if the Giants pay for all these guys' travel. If they did, kudos to the Giants. But if not, kudos to the players for willing to pay to come out there. I'm sure the Giants paid for it. I don't see how they couldn't. But, he came out from Puerto Rico for this, and he stands in front of Bochy and does this big salute. And I just thought that was the coolest thing, because the other thing I think we have to think about is Angel Pagan was still a very good, or at least average, major leaguer when the Giants did not re-sign him. But no one signed him. And he just kind of drifted off into mediocrity and unknowingness. And I just think that he had a couple years left in him. But especially when you think about some of the players the Giants have had the last couple of years in terms of their statistics. I mean, I would have taken Angel Pagan in 2017, 2018, 2019. But
what's interesting about that with Pagan is nobody else took a flyer on him, meaning the only man that could get him to play to his full potential was Bruce Bochy.
I know. It's that speaks volumes for that. He was not, he did not age out. He was not too old for the game. Now he is. It's been a few years, but he showed up. It was incredible. And then they showed the 2014 team, and you're thinking, okay, well, isn't Madison Bumgarner part of this team, and Pablo Sandoval, and Buster Posey, and Brandon Crawford? Yeah, of course. They were bringing guys back that were not on the active roster. So you have Chris Heston, Santiago Casilla, who was just on the A's, Javier Lopez, who's doing TV for the Giants, Gregor Blanco, Jake Peavy, Jeremy Affeldt, and of course, the surprise, which we all expected anyway in a couple of days leading up to it, Tim Lincecum. His first appearance at Oracle Park / AT&T Park in 4 years, and he was incredible. I'm not going to play the video right now, or the audio right now, but his interview with Amy G was classic Timmy, wasn't it?
Oh my God, yes. It just goes to show you why we love Timmy so much. Because in the interview, he basically said that he lost his way for a little bit and then had some family stuff come up, and now he's just trying to find himself. And if that's not just a human, normal, real answer, I don't know what is. Yeah. And that's why we love him so much. Nobody got a bigger cheer than Timmy. Bochy is the only one who got a bigger cheer than Timmy. Exactly. And that just speaks volumes to how much he means to us as a fan base and how much he meant to the Giants as an organization. Bochy talked about him. And then that when they all came, and they waited for Tim. They introduced Heston, Casilla, Lopez, Blanco, Peavy, and Affeldt. They're all standing out there. And then they say, and also, of course, and then Tim comes out, and the guys kind of spread, and, they let him walk down with the trophy, and then, he puts it on the pedestal and goes to see Bochy. And I don't think I saw Bochy hug anybody as hard and as close as he did Tim Lincecum.
It was such a father-son kind of hug. It
Yes.
was so amazing to see, and it just brought back a lot of memories, not only of the World Championships, that's fine. We all know what Tim did for this team, but it's hard to say, but He's going to be fine. He's earned a lot more money in his life than you and I and all of our listeners will ever earn in their lives combined.
Right.
But that said, there's a little bit of a kind of a, oh man, I wish he could have done a little bit better. I wish he could have lasted a little bit longer. I wish Tim Lincecum could have been that guy for 10, 12, 14 years for the Giants. And as it turns out, his body was just capable of being that little Spitfire for, 5, 6, 7 years. That's it. That's all his body could perform with. It's all it had. And it was enough. It was enough for us fans. It was enough for management. It was enough for his teammates. It was enough to win 2 Cy Youngs and be a part of 3 World Series championships. So that's a lot more than most baseball players can say. And I think that's what we need to focus on, not what Tim Lincecum could have been, but what he was, because what he was incredible.
Well, Tim and Boch basically became Giants together. Timmy's first start was, I believe, June of 2007 against the Phillies on a Sunday night game.
I went to a local bar, the Clawda, an Irish pub, to watch that particular start because he was the next Cy Young. Apparently.
Yeah, see, you remember where you were. Yeah. I'll never forget. My dad was so excited at the prospect of Timmy, joining the team. Timmy was one of those guys that brought us together with this team. I mean, like that 2007 season between Timmy's debut and Bonds' 756, it was just it was enough. It was enough for us. You know what I mean? And I mean, we obviously didn't know the things to come. But Timmy was a big part of that. And you mentioned fatherly, type hug. I think that's why they have such a special connection. I think that, Boch feels like, Timmy came in and things changed. And, I wholeheartedly believe that. And it was great. It was great to see Timmy. I'll never tire of it. I don't care if that I'm a 40-year-old man who gets giddy over the sight of seeing a 150-pound soaking wet ex-pitcher. I don't care. You know what I mean? Timmy just meant so much to everybody, and I'm so glad. I don't think it would have been a great ceremony, but it wouldn't have been the same without him.
I agree. I just what he gave to the Giants, we can never take away. It was incredible, but at the same time, you have guys like your once-in-a-generation type talent. Justin Verlander. I mean, what if Tim, Lincecum was like that? Because he's still throwing 95, right? Lincecum, when he came up, was throwing 97, 98. And then, of course, it slowed down, and he was in the low 90s when he retired. Well, no, take that back. He has not retired yet, officially.
Right.
He's transitioning.
And he doesn't know if he's going to, which
right.
I kind of give him credit for. And somebody else who didn't retire is Barry Bonds. He never officially retired.
Technically, you're correct. Yeah. But, Justin Verlander doesn't throw as hard as he used to, but he still throws 95, 96 as a 36-year-old. It's something if Tim Lincecum had his physical ability to throw that velocity, there's no doubt that he would still be on the active roster. And who knows if it would have changed the course of history in 2016. And even the last couple of years. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, it wouldn't have been complete. He's our favorite son as much as he is Boch's favorite son.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so then Larry Baer came up and talked about the hiring of Bruce Bochy at Peter McGowan's house, which we just mentioned. It was Sabian who brought him in. Sabian has been a stalwart for the Giants. He, of course, is not integral. Well, he is integral, but he's not the main point of signings now that Farhan is. But we have to tip our caps to, Sabian and what he did. He brought in Bochy. He brought in most of the talent that won those World Series. You can't deny that. He may have been aged out a little bit in terms of his analytics and what where the Giants are going with Farhan, but at the same time, you got to tip your cap to what he did.
Yeah, Savvy Saves is just, he's the catalyst for everything, and he's the man who brought him here. And to think that when Philippe was the manager, Sabian might have been looking down at San Diego going, if I ever get a chance, I want to get that guy in this clubhouse. And then to have the confluence of events of Bochy's contract running out. And again, he was not fired in San Diego.
No, he was not.
The Giants swooped in and signed him. And it was totally a Sabian move to do such a thing because, like I talked about earlier, they needed a transition. And, I now wish the last time I talked to Brian Sabian, I had thanked him for bringing Bruce Bochy, but I didn't get the chance to do that. I was too busy thanking him for championships. So I didn't really get the chance to thank him, for the Bochy thing. And I think about it. It's funny because I've met Sabian's in-laws. I've met his wife's parents. I waited on them at a restaurant in Florida when I was living in Tampa back in 2011. And Sabian's father-in-law was so excited to find out I was a Giants fan that he ran out to the car. He got pictures from the 2010 parade because this was early 2011. Wow. Yeah, he sat with me and we went through them, and I got some stories and stuff like that. And it's funny because that ended up being my in with Sabian down the road. But, it was Sabian went from being vilified by Giants fans in 97 to being absolutely loved now. And championships will do that. And bringing in guys like Bruce Bochy will do that. And we have to give Sabian, like I said, a ton of credit for bringing him in. Because it wouldn't have been any other way. And I kind of wish he had spoken instead of maybe Larry Baer. And this has nothing to do with what happened with Larry Baer before the season started. Larry Baer likes to hear his own voice. And so sometimes it runs a little bit. And so it would have been nice to have somebody like that. But I get it. He's an owner, and that's the way it should be. And in addition to them, throwing the ceremony, Baer, during his speech, he had Bumgarner bring it over. He called him Mad Bum, which blew my mind. They don't do that in the clubhouse.
I heard that, yeah.
Yeah, that was weird to me because they don't call him Mad Bum inside. We call him Mad Bum. They don't call him Mad Bum. Even when Bochy was giving his speech, he said Bum. He didn't say Mad Bum. I digress. Larry and the Giants gave Bochy home plate from Oracle Park to take with him. And I'm curious to find out because I'm pretty sure they took the old home plate from Candlestick and installed it at Oracle. I'm curious to find out if that's the same home plate.
So I was thinking the same thing. They flew it via helicopter.
It was a big deal.
Candlestick to Oracle or AT&T or Pac Bell when it was back in the day, and implanted it. So if you believe what video tells you, home plate that was just given to Bruce Bochy is actually from Candlestick because apparently it's been in the Oracle Park ground for the last 20 years. I don't know if that's true. I doubt it. I think that, things are changed. Who cares about where home plate is, whatever. But yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, it was. I wonder how many people that had that same thought that we had. Like, wait a second, they brought the plate over. Is that the same plate? And it was also interesting to see how deep the plate is. Because I've worked on many a baseball field in my day, and none of our home plates were that thick. They're not the thin rubber that you just throw on the ground, but it's still a thinnish rubber, and it has spikes underneath it usually. And you pounded the spikes into the ground as opposed to setting it into the ground in what was almost a concrete structure. And I thought that was cool, and I also got a kick out of how Bochy basically was given home plate and put it down next to him and didn't even think about it or look at it again.
Yeah.
And I'm sure
he put his water bottle on top of it, by the way.
Oh my God, I didn't even notice that.
Oh yeah.
And then I thought it was cool that apparently Bochy is a huge fan of the New Zealand All Blacks rugby team.
Yeah, that was news to me.
Yeah, me too. And so the Giants are sending him to New Zealand to hang out with the All Blacks. Apparently, he's never gotten that chance because the guy's been in baseball for 44 years. So he never had the chance to go down there. So the Giants are sending him, because he needs somebody to pay for him, sending him down there to New Zealand on a trip, which I thought that was a great gift because, as Larry Bear said, what do you get the guy who has everything? We can't get him more booze. He's been given more booze this season than they stock in a Las Vegas bar. Yeah. So, they had to come up with something unique. And I thought that was a really, really cool and unique gift. And it really seemed like Bochy appreciated it. It really did. And I think Bear really had to talk to Bochy's family to find out what that perfect gift would be. And it seemed very much from the heart of ownership, and it seemed very appropriate for the situation. So I thought that was cool. That was a great way for Larry to wrap up his thing, to have the video tribute from a couple of the New Zealand All Blacks, who frankly did not sound like they were reading off of cue cards. So they understand the impact that Bochy's had on the Giants, and they are on the other side of the world. So I thought that was really cool. It goes back to all the thank you videos from guys like Mooch and Kerr and stuff like that, showing how Bochy crossed sports. And then, it just went all Giant centric. Larry Bear was done, and finally players got to take over and really express their gratitude towards Bochy.
Yeah, it was Buster Posey, Gregor Blanco, Ryan Vogelsong, and then Panda as well.
Yeah, but that first group was Peavy, Blanco, and Vogie all came up at the same time.
Yeah. Peavy was awesome. He was he was inciting a little bit of partake of illicit substances, I guess we could say, by Bochy. Well, he declared that he didn't partake in the beginning, but at the end of his speech, he basically implicitly incited that he did. But either way, it was hella funny.
Yeah, that was my favorite speech because it's no secret that I indulge now and then, and to hear Jake make those jokes, I know Flan, and I know that he's like that already. I was not surprised by that. I think a lot of us have seen a picture of Flan and Boch late at night, wine bottle in front of them, faces red. But the story that Jake Peavy told was when he was in rookie ball or A ball, and he was just trying to break with the big league camp for the Padres way back in the day. Bochy was the manager. He said he didn't go talk to the manager. He didn't know who, Bochy didn't know who he was. He's just some scrub from A ball. He's like, I'm not going to go talk to the manager. And Peavy happened to go to the Willie Nelson concert on his own. He didn't go with Flan and Bochy, and there was somebody else named. I can't remember who it was. But they ran into each other at the show, and then they went backstage with Willie Nelson and got on Willie's tour bus. And Jake fully admitted that Flan passed him something. And like you said, though, he alluded to Bochy, and my favorite part about that was Bochy looked around at his family. There was a shot of him, and you could see him look back and look around at his family to be like, I'm not sure I want them to be hearing this. Yeah. And I give Jake Peavy so much credit for doing that because they obviously have a relationship where he could throw that kind of stuff out there and get away with it. It was great. And then I was really impressed by Gregor Blanco. This man speaks English as a second language, and he articulated perfectly. He talked about how it was his childhood dream to lead off in Game 7 of the World Series. And Bochy's the man that made that dream come true for him because he was the leadoff batter in the 2014 Game 7 of the World Series. Like, people almost forget, Gregor Blanco was a starting outfielder on 2 different championship teams. Mm-hmm. He replaced Pagan in 14, and he was our regular left fielder in left fielder in 2012 after they traded for Pence. So, Gregor has got to feel like Bochy gave him a career, and it was really cool to see how he did it. And then Vogie was Vogie. I mean, not much stuck out there except for him. He did say, I don't want to turn this into what was the line? He talked about how he didn't want to turn it into a roast of Bochy, and then he roasted him on something. And you could see all these guys had just genuine love and affection for him, for Bochy.
Yeah, it was incredible. Man. It was it's even so hard to think about, because he's not going to be our manager anymore. We're used to it. We expect it. We predict it. That's not going to happen. But PV had a great talk. He talked about Bochy, of course, in many ways. Posey said that it was funny when he was looking at all the guys. He said, "Some of you guys look old." That was totally anti-Posey, but it was fantastic. Bochy himself said, "Torture is better than going home," and that was just a perfect tie-in to our podcast because we are TortureCast, and this is why we named our podcast Torture. Torture is better than going home. Torture to win a World Series is better than going home. Torture to win even 85 games and being a wild card and losing is better than going home.
Yep.
There are so many reasons why we've named our podcast TortureCast, even though that sounds like an S&M thing. But oh man, so Bochy's got a lot of things going on, and one of the things that he was asked after the whole Bruce Bochy presentation, they had the post-game questions. This was his last question officially by the members of the media, and it was really appropriate. So here it is.
Boch, when the President of the United States leaves office, traditionally he leaves a note in the desk for his successor saying something. What might you say to your successor if you could leave a note like that?
Yeah. I'd probably leave a note telling him he'd get the best job in baseball. And I mean that. And I talk about the owners and our front office, the city, surrounding areas, the ballpark, the fans. He's getting the best job in baseball.
That's crazy, dude. Like he's getting the best job in baseball. I know, like I'm crying too, man.
Well, Bochy wasn't holding it together there, so I mean, why should we? You can hear it in his voice.
Oh God!
It's awesome that he thinks that, and I don't disagree with him. It might be the best job in baseball because there is such support from all of us, and you're not subjected to the same crap you're subjected to in New York and Chicago and LA, where every single move is scrutinized and they call for your head every other day. Yeah. If the Giants had been one of those giant market teams, the fan cry for Bochy to be fired after 2 or 3 years of them not doing anything might have been greater. But they trusted him, and it just, oh my God, you could hear it. He was trying to keep it together there. He really was, and I'm trying to keep it together now too.
Wow.
So, yeah. So you watched it. Your son, did he seem to have a bit more of an understanding about this era of Giants baseball after it ended?
Yeah, he did. Certainly not to our extent, but he understood why I get emotional about Giants games overall. He has a Giants hat and a Giants jersey, and he doesn't understand the whole game and how it goes and how it connects to managers and players and fans, but he's getting it now. He knows that it impacted me, and I told him that Bruce Bochy is like me, like coaching his team, right? It's like, what if I just stopped coaching your team?
Right.
You'd be upset about it, right? So he's like, yeah, you're my coach. Because I've been coaching him, of course, since he was eligible to play Little League. But he could play for another, father. That's fine. But he only knows me, so that's why I was trying to use that as context. But,
that's a great context. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, because he does feel like a dad. He really does. I wanted to reach out to him and hug him. To be honest, I really did. I didn't, of course, because I'd be escorted from the premises. But that's what I felt like. I felt like hugging him. He is a great man, and it's tough, Eric, to see this whole reign, this era end. But that's okay, because change is good, and change happens, and we're gonna do this. But he's going to manage Team France in the 2020 Olympics. And his son Brett is actually going to pitch, he said. What's interesting about this is that his son Brett, who was at the ceremony yesterday, he actually did pitch for the Giants in 2014 and 2015. Now, in 2014, that was the first time a manager in the major leagues had ever called for his son to be a reliever. He pitched 3+ innings that year and 3+ innings the next year. He has 6.1 or 6.2 innings in the major leagues with like a 2.86 ERA or something like that. Really cool stuff, really fun stuff. But Brett Bochy did not want to pitch in the major leagues anymore. So he decided to pursue a career in real estate. And I looked up his real estate page. It's very interesting. He's sold a lot of $1 million properties down in San Diego.
Wow.
Yeah, it's that's what he wanted to do. I mean, the dude obviously didn't do poorly in the minors or the majors. He just said, this isn't financially going to be what supports my family. So he decided to do that. So anyway, Bruce said that Brett's going to pitch for France in the Olympics next year. If you didn't know, Bruce Bochy was born in France, so he was a naturalized citizen of France, and of course he's a U.S. citizen as well. So that's his next managerial assignment, I guess you could say. I don't think they're going to make it that far, but that's a product of not him, but the players. I don't know if he's going to pitch or manage in the major leagues anymore. We'll see if that happens. What do you think?
I've been going back and forth on this. There's part of me that feels like he was forced out when Farhan was hired. Mm-hmm. But there's also part of me that believes Bochy when he says that he's good at reading situations, and he read that this was the time to step away. And he has shown us that he is good at reading situations. 1, 2, 3 championships tell us that. And so I think he's done managing. I think the way he looks at that grandson, there's so much pride. They took the victory lap in the car around the field, and that little boy was doffing his cap just as much as Boch was.
That was awesome.
It was so cool. And it's so funny to think that his family thinks about him so much in the same way that these players do. And so I think he's ready. I think he's ready to retire. I think he'll join the Giants in some sort of front office capacity. I believe if Kevin Towers was still alive and working for the Padres, that might be a different story.
Yeah.
But because Towers has passed away and because his ties to the Padres are not there anymore, even though they need a new manager, I don't see him going back down there. They have their foundation, which is for homeless prenatal care, which was renamed the Kim and Bruce Bochy Doula program. which I give him a ton of credit for, especially working in homelessness, being somebody who's been homeless in my life. I love to see when other people reach out for those kinds of things because, resources are scarce. And I think his impact and his legacy is in the Bay Area. And my thought for the future is he'll probably sign on in a senior advisor role, much like Dusty, much like Philippe. And I mean, Dusty, it took years to come back to do that because, he decided to go manage other places. But I think that's what's going to happen with Boch. I think he's going to just, kind of cruise into the front office. He's going to play with his grandson, and I think he's going to enjoy retirement. And I'm going to miss him. I want to say thank you, Boch. I've said it a ton over the last, few weeks on the Twitters. I even changed my profile picture to Bochy and Timmy the other day because those are the guys. Those are the guys. And so I'm greatly going to miss Bruce Bochy. And that ceremony was the perfect way to wrap up his career. And I don't know about you, but I'm okay with this chapter closing because it didn't close. It closed in a positive manner. And I'm glad Bruce Bochy got the send-off that he deserved.
Eric, you put it in a really good context. I just, like we said earlier, this is it's a hard podcast because, this man has meant so much to us personally, but, to the Giants and to all of you fans out there. But that's going to do it for episode 182 of the podcast of the Torchcast. That's what we call it, right? Right?
I think so. Torture.
So.
It's better than going home.
Yeah, the Giants didn't finish the season so well, but they finished the season very well, if you know what I mean. So if you want to listen to us talk about the last week of the Giants' performance and predictions for the playoffs, check out episode 183, which we're going to record here in a few minutes. But other than that, we're going to sign off for episode 182. This is Chad. You can follow us individually at ChadK21 for myself, at 2OutHits for Eric, and of course collectively at Torturecast. Like us on Facebook. And you got anything else, Eric?
No. Thank you, Boch.
Thank you, Boch. Seriously. We're still crying.
Yeah, we have to record a whole other podcast now. Are you kidding me?
Hopefully it's only 10 minutes. Anyway, all right.
Right.
We'll see you in episode 183. Check us out there simultaneously. We'll see you then. A boom.
A big thank you to everybody for listening to the Torturecast, the podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. Follow us on Twitter at Torturecast. You can also like us on Facebook or check out our blog at torturecast.com. I also want to say thank you to Ashcon and Bailey for letting us use their song Feeling Like a Giant for our intro. For Ben Lee and Chad King, my name is Willie Dills saying, we'll see you next time.